door can stay open, that's fine.
Good evening, Council, SLT. I see we have quorum, so I call this regular scheduled meeting for Monday, June 15th into session at 5:30 p.m. Approval of agenda, and I'll go to the clerk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I do have a motion by Councillor Hildebrand and seconded by Councillor Wink. Be it resolved that the agenda for the June 15th, 2020 regular meeting of Council be adopted. I am aware that one member of Council wishes to make some amendments, so you could call that. You have Councillor Hildebrand with his hand up there.
Okay, Councillor Hildebrand.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That the agenda for the June 15th, 2020 regular meeting of Council be amended as follows. That the agenda item 4.2.1 Cannabis Control Committee be considered prior to agenda item 4.1.1, and that agenda items 12.1 and 12.2 be considered immediately following the agenda item 17, and that item 12.2 be considered first.
Okay, thank you, Councillor.
Second.
Do you have a seconder for that? And Councillor Hahn is the seconder. Thank you. Any discussion on this motion, on the amendment? Okay, go ahead to you, Clerk, Madam Clerk.
So seeing no discussion, I will call the vote. Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
The motion to amend the agenda carries. So now we'll go back, unless there are further amendments, we'll go back to the agenda as amended.
Call for discussion.
Mr. Mayor, I don't see any hands up for further amendments.
Nope.
So if it's your wish, I'll call the vote.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
The motion carries. The agenda is approved as amended.
Okay. Next is the disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. After viewing the agenda, does any councillor have a pecuniary interest to declare? Not seeing. Oh, Councillor Kaur?
Councillor
Yes.
Kaur, you're on. There you go. You're.
Yes. Yes, I have a personal conflict of interest with 12.1 and 12.2.
Thank you.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, with a conflict of interest regarding those two items, we would ask the councillor, since we can't vacate the chamber, to disable the video and mute the conversation so as not to participate in the discussion or influence the vote.
Yes, I will.
Any other pecuniary interest? Not seeing any, I will return to the clerk.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, the agenda was amended to hear from Mr. Nohara and Mr. McDonald first.
Okay, it's over. Oh, have we already voted on that?
We don't need to vote on
Oh.
pecuniary interest.
Oh, of course, I'm sorry. So, next, so we'll hear from Mr. O'Hara now then, please. Go ahead, Tim.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, perfect.
That's great. And Nick McDonald, are you on the line?
Yes, I am.
Oh, terrific. All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. It's good to be back. It seems like we never leave. So hopefully in a few more weeks, we'll be frequenting you a little less. On June the 1st, we provided a schedule to council for the Cannabis Control Committee's activities leading to and through the completion of the official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment. We're about halfway, about halfway through that schedule. We're on track, which I'm happy to say. And this evening, I have Nick McDonald, our planning consultant, with us to give you an overview of the changes that are being proposed to the official plan amendment and the zoning bylaw amendment that were circulated by staff, by the committee, back in April sometime, and that we received comments through May 5th, I believe. Lots of comments. We had an excellent response from the public, from the industry, and from the agencies, which have informed the changes that Nick has considered and that are before you this evening. And it's just to receive the information, receive the revisions as information, and to give you an early opportunity to maybe review them closer and in preparation for what we still think is a realistic July the 13th meeting to bring the final work product to you for consideration and approval. So I'm going to turn it over to Nick, who will walk you through or discuss you through the changes since the version that was circulated for comment.
Great. Now I'm not unmuted.
Yeah, there you
Thanks
go.
very much, Tim, and good evening, members of council. As Tim mentioned, a previous iteration of both the official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment was circulated. Both of those documents were dated April 7th. They were both very extensive and detailed. The documents were both posted on the town's website on April 17th, 2020. Notice was also sent out on April 16th for those who sent comments in on previous drafts, spoke or signed a sign-in sheet at a public meeting, as well as commenting agencies. And it was also published in the Voice of Pelham on April 22nd. In total, notices were sent to about 170 email addresses. We got comments, 40 comments from the public. We got comments from the Niagara Escarpment Commission, Niagara Region, and also comments from the industry. And I'm in the process of preparing an addendum report which reviews the initial documents that were circulated and what they were all about and what they were proposing to do, along with the comments received from members of the public, the agencies, and the industry. And all of that will be packaged up in a manner to support a revised OPA and ZBA that will be ultimately presented to you as a council for adoption. In the last few weeks, we've also had two Zoom video discussions with Niagara Region. They did prepare a letter and had a number of comments. The first meeting with them was to understand their comments and have a very frank discussion about what the town of Pelham was trying to do. We both went away and they reached out again and suggested we have another call, which happened today. And I'm happy to report that based on the version of the OPA that I will be talking about in a few minutes, it would appear that the region is very close to indicating that it will exempt the OPA from its approval going forward, which was certainly a goal of mine and something I would certainly recommend so that the decision on this OPA is a town of Pelham decision and not a region of Niagara decision. Nothing wrong about the region of Niagara making that decision, but I personally think that this is a town matter and it should be dealt with by town council. Having said that, there are a few minor changes that need to be made to the OPA to reflect some lingering concerns the region has, which are all very minor, I might add, and that will be accommodated in the next little while, or the next week, sorry. So I understand both the OPA and ZBA is in your agenda package. I don't propose to go through both documents word for word, but what I'd like to do now is provide an overview of the basic changes that we've made to both documents to reflect the comments that have been made, and obviously some further consideration on my part and others in terms of the wording that we're using and the approach that we're taking. And as I mentioned, there will be a more detailed report explaining all of the changes coming to you shortly. So in terms of the OPA itself, there is a new iteration and it is dated May 28th. So that's almost 2 months or 7 weeks after the previous iteration. And what I'd like to do is go through some of the more significant changes that I've made. One of the changes I made, and this is to the preamble of the OPA itself and not to the OPA. I'm sure members of council know how an official plan amendment works, but there's two parts to it. The first part is the preamble, and it sets out, where the amendment applies, what the basis for that amendment is, and the second part is the actual amendment itself. The first part is not a legal part of the amendment. It's intended to be explanatory. It's written in a more narrative way to provide the reader with an understanding of how we got to where we got to in terms of the policies. And then the second part, the actual amendment, is the document that actually gets approved by council and which of course is appealable sometime down the road. So within the preamble piece, I thought it was very important to include reference to a precedent that has already been set by the province in terms of regulating agricultural uses in prime agricultural areas. Both the industry letters and the region both indicated initially that they had concerns about the tone of the OPA and the direction it was taking in terms of prohibiting agricultural uses in prime agricultural areas. That was certainly a large part of the industry's comments, and certainly the region reflected on that as well. And in thinking about it, I certainly recognize, as many people do, that growing cannabis and processing it to a certain extent is clearly an agricultural use. It does have industrial connotations, but at the end of the day, it's a crop that is being grown, and it is certainly an agricultural use as a consequence. And the province very strongly promotes all kinds of agricultural uses within prime agricultural areas in the province. And I certainly recognize that as well. But at the same time, while the province does recognize that, they have guidelines that basically regulate where certain types of agricultural uses can go. And for those of you who are familiar with these guidelines, they are the minimum distance separation guidelines. And they work both ways. They work to prevent non-farm uses from having an impact on agriculture. And they also work the other way in terms of making sure that new farms and livestock facilities in particular will not impact on non-farm uses, with the main consideration being odor. And so I've included some text in the preamble that really reflects upon that provincial direction. And it really is a way of telling the province that, hey, yes, we agree agriculture should be permitted everywhere, but even you recognize as a province that there are limitations on where certain agricultural uses can occur on the basis of odor concerns and the adverse effects from odor. And essentially what we're doing here in the town of Pelham is essentially the same thing. The MDS guidelines do not deal with cannabis. They don't deal with odor from cannabis in any way. They may in the future, There may be a new set of guidelines that the province releases at some point which do that. But until that happens, it really is up to local municipalities like Pelham to basically figure out how to regulate and control this type of use and to minimize the types of adverse effects you've already been experiencing in the town. So I've included some language in the preamble to the OPA, which both the region and town staff, I think, appreciated very much because it really sets a really good precedent for what we're doing here in the town. The second thing we've done is to further highlight and recognize that the cultivation of cannabis is an agricultural use. Some municipalities have gone down the road of calling it industrial. I think at the end of the day, if they ended up at a hearing on this, I don't think they'd be successful at that. It is clearly an agricultural use, and the region was concerned to some extent that we were limiting certain types of agricultural uses based on the type of crop being grown, which was a concern of theirs. This led to a third change that we made to the amendment, and that was to remove the cannabis overlay from the amendment. The previous iteration of the amendment essentially created an overlay that would have sat on top of the good general agricultural designation and the industrial designation. And it would have permitted both indoor and outdoor cultivation and processing without an official plan amendment, but subject to a zoning bylaw amendment. Within the specialty agricultural designation, and this is the area that's subject to the Greenbelt Plan, that land was not part of the cannabis overlay, with that meaning that an OPA and a ZBA would be required in the future for a cannabis operation, indoor or outdoor. The industry obviously was concerned about that, no surprise, but the region was also concerned about that because they felt it wasn't consistent with the provincial policy statement, which promotes and permits to some extent agriculture wherever agricultural uses are permitted. So I felt that the key purpose of what we're doing is to ensure that there is a Planning Act process for every new application that wants to look at Pelham for another CanTrust or a Brettacan. And we've got that through a ZBA process that we've established already. So we didn't really need to add another layer of approvals to that planning process. So we've deleted the cannabis overlay from the OPA itself, meaning that there would not be an OPA required for a future indoor or outdoor cannabis operation in the town. This, of course, satisfied the region to a very large extent. They are on board with the town's approach of requiring a zoning bylaw amendment for any new cannabis use. So we're all on the same page with that, which I'm very happy to report. The other thing that we did was we took out any reference to outdoor cultivation within the official plan amendment itself. The previous iteration of the OPA essentially lumped both outdoor and indoor together, such that a ZBA would be required in the good general agriculture area for outdoor, and an OPA would be required in the specialty for outdoor as well, in addition to the ZBA. In thinking about that further, our focus really all along has been on the indoor facilities, and we didn't see the need to continue restricting outdoor cultivation like we were in the draft. And as a consequence, we've taken out any reference to outdoor cultivation within the OPA and have instead suggested that there be a setback for outdoor cultivation from sensitive uses. That setback is not in the draft ZBA that is on your agenda, was intended to be there, but didn't make it in for whatever reason. but we're proposing to include a 300-meter setback for outdoor cultivation from sensitive uses, which is based on County of Norfolk, and since then, City of Ottawa. Both have included similar setbacks within their zoning bylaws. So we certainly discussed that with the region as well. They were pleased that we had decided to go down that road and deal very specifically in the OPA with indoor cultivation and processing, which clearly has been the problem in the town, not outdoor. Another thing we did, and there were a number of minor changes made in this manner, but there's language in the provincial policy statement that speaks to avoiding adverse effects as a first principle. And adverse effects from odor are clearly adverse effects that are well known in the town. And I've included a number of policies and references to avoiding adverse effects as a first principle. So when folks come into town looking to develop another one of these uses, that would be the first principle applied to the consideration of such an application. However, avoidance is certainly not possible in every circumstance. That's just life. And as a consequence, minimizing and mitigating adverse effects then becomes very important. And clearly, the simplest way of minimizing and mitigating is through the use of setbacks. And we've included some guidance within the OPA on setbacks, but a key first principle is the avoidance of adverse effects being that first principle. There were a couple of circumstances within the OPA where I used the term negative impact and required essentially proponents to demonstrate that there would be no negative impact on the community, on other uses in the area, and so on. And concerns were raised about how that would be determined. And in thinking about that further, I've made a number of changes to the OPA itself to provide some additional guidance for staff and council when a future application is submitted on how to gauge impacts and to determine whether those impacts are minimized to the extent possible in terms of moving forward. A number of other technical changes have been made throughout the OPA, many of which were really designed to tighten up the language, remove anything that was nebulous or unclear. And when you have so many eyes looking at it, as there was in the last 6 or 7 weeks, quite a few folks made a number of great suggestions on how the OPA could be clearer in terms of describing its intent and ensuring that the requirements of the town are being implemented to the greatest extent possible. One of the little technical changes we made is we did provide some additional clarity on how setbacks were to be measured. We had included in the April 7th version a statement to the effect that setbacks from sensitive uses would be measured from the lot line of the sensitive use to the facility creating the adverse effects. That's incorrect, quite frankly. It is really from the sensitive use itself to the boundary of the facility, and that's the way it's done by practitioners in the field. Other than that, we've I guess 2 more things. We have added some additional guidance on the factors that would go into determining what kind of setback we would expect to see applied when an application comes forward. And those were included in a section B2154, need for setbacks. And we tried to explain, why in the first place we were requiring a zoning bylaw amendment. A core planning opinion of mine is that it is impossible to develop a predetermined setback for these kinds of uses in advance. There are so many factors to consider. And while there are those that say that's the best way to go, I quite frankly don't agree. And that's why my recommendation is that there be a zoning bylaw amendment applied for when a new CAN trust or a Redecan comes through the door. And what I tried to do in the amendment is to basically support that opinion by identifying what I think are the various factors that make a setback very site-specific and very context-specific. So for example, if a proposal is in a purpose-built greenhouse for that use, it probably will have higher ceilings and a much better ability to deal with odors than would someone purchasing an older, low-rise greenhouse in town. So that's certainly a factor that has an impact on setback. Clearly, the size and the scale of the proposed use has an impact. Obviously, the bigger the use, the more significant the impact potentially. However, on the other hand, the bigger the use, the more able someone may be able to deal with adverse effects. It goes both ways. Proximity and number of sensitive uses obviously is a factor. There are over 1,800 sensitive uses in the rural agriculture area of the town, quite a bit, and they are clustered in some areas. The location of the proposed use in relation to prevailing winds, the nature of the adverse effects that already exist in the area, and of course the impact of topography on the dispersion of odor. The last thing we did in the OPA, and this is something we talked about in our last call, was to remove any reference to recognizing the existing uses, the Redecan facility and the CAN Trust facility in particular, as existing uses and requiring them to proceed through a zoning bylaw change when they wish to expand. After some consideration of this, it was determined that there is another avenue to follow, and that is by not zoning the two properties to permit indoor cannabis cultivation and processing in the zoning bylaw, which I'll talk about in a moment, which means when it comes into effect that both of those uses end up becoming legal non-conforming uses, meaning that they would not be able to expand unless they applied to the Committee of Adjustment to expand a legal non-conforming use. And there already are policies in your official plan that deal with legal non-conforming uses, and those, of course, would be relied upon moving forward. Other than that, the amendment continues to set out a comprehensive set of study requirements. Some minor wording changes were made to those study requirements to reflect the correct use of terminology, for example. In one case, we added a requirement that whoever is going to be doing any work on an odor study, that person should be a licensed engineering practitioner, for example, just to make sure that we have qualified people doing the kind of work that we need to get done in the future. We've continued to include what I'm calling setback guidelines within the OPA. This was in the previous iteration as well. There may be some minor wording changes we make around that particular section based on our call today with the region. But essentially the idea is that we already know as a community, and well, I've heard from the community that there is some real live experience and knowledge in the town about what these setbacks will be in the future if someone comes along. And we think it's important to identify those in advance so folks have an idea of what challenges may be in front of them if they're considering the making of an application. So that's basically an overview of the OPA changes itself. I'll very quickly go through the ZBA changes. They're quite minor in comparison to the OPA, keeping in mind that where we started with the OPA was to ensure there was a planning process moving forward. That has not changed. What we've done essentially with the OPA is clarified, made things a little clearer, and certainly made clear what the intent of the town is. So with respect to the ZBA zoning bylaw amendment, we've created 2 zones in the zoning bylaw. I'm calling them the agricultural cannabis zone and the general industrial cannabis zone, the A-CAN and the M2 CAN zones. They would be included within the zoning bylaw, but they would not be applied to any property in the town. Essentially, it would be the zone that someone applies for when they want to establish an indoor cultivation and processing facility. So we spent some time, I spent some time certainly looking at the standards that were in the previous iteration of the zoning bylaw and discussed those setbacks and other requirements with the Cannabis Control Committee at a meeting held a week and a half ago or so. And what I did is I really wanted to make sure that the requirements that we were including in the zoning bylaw were appropriate and would, if applied, allow for development to actually occur in accordance with the zoning bylaw. In other words, I didn't want the standards to all conspire to somehow make it impossible for someone to develop a greenhouse on a particular property. So that's what I did. I also thought carefully about making a distinction between microprocessing and standard processing and cultivation. Microprocessing operations are very small and much, much smaller than what you see here in the town at Redecan and CanTrust. And I feel that with the smaller operations that we don't need to be as restrictive in terms of minimum lot areas and setbacks from lot lines as we do for larger operations. So that is reflected in the changes that I've made to the zoning bylaw. In the previous iteration, we lumped all operations, whether they were large or small, into the same setbacks and minimum lot areas. So with that all being said, the minimum front yard for micro-processing and micro-cultivation has been reduced from 100 meters in the previous bylaw to 20 meters, which is the current standard for greenhouses in the town. The minimum front yard for the larger operations, we have that at 100 meters, but I'm suggesting that it be reduced to 80 meters because after I do the math and apply the side yard and the rear yard requirements, the 100 meters seemed a little excessive and it didn't provide for an adequately sized building envelope. With that being said, the minimum side yards, I'm suggesting reducing it to 30 meters from 30 meters to 15 meters and from 50 meters to 25 meters where there are fans exhausting into that yard. And again, that would be for microprocessing. And again, that would be the same standard and requirement for other greenhouses in the town. For the larger facilities, we're reducing it from 60 meters to 40 meters and from 80 meters to 60 meters, again, because of the math I did to determine how much land was available for development based on the minimum lot areas and minimum lot sizes, minimum lot frontages that we were going to be requiring. Side yards for microprocessing, reduce those to 20 meters, which is the same as the existing bylaw. The minimum exterior side yard for the larger facilities down to 80 meters. And the 2 exceptions that we had initially included in the zoning bylaw to apply to the Redecan and CanTrust facility have been deleted as per my previous comments, basically indicating that these uses would be legal non-conforming uses and not included within within either of the 2 zones that we're creating. So both of these amendments will continue to be finessed as we move forward. However, I don't anticipate any significant changes beyond what is in your agenda package today, based on a very positive call we've had with the region this afternoon. So I'm very confident that we've developed an appropriate and a balanced approach to this issue. I should also indicate that in looking at all of the comments, I very carefully considered the comments made by the public, the region in particular, and the industry. The industry did have quite a number of comments and concerns, and some of the comments did result in changes being made within the documents you have in front of you, which are really just for receipt today, not for approval. If only to clarify the intent to ensure that everyone understands what the policies and regulations are all about. I didn't really have a plan to present all of this other than what I just did in terms of providing an overview. Tim or I would be happy to answer any questions you may have, and I will stop there.
Thank you, Nick, for that detailed analysis of what you have been working on. Before I open it to council, my one question is on the setbacks when you have gone from 30 meters down to 20 meters. But even though it is 20 meters, those businesses, of course, would still, of course, have to conform to the odorous bylaw. So if there is a complaint, they still have to obey or conform, I guess, to the odorous bylaw. So I'm wondering, so did we have a little bit of a trade-off there? That because I know Tim and the crew put a lot of work into the odorous bylaw. Did we, is that why, let's put it this way, is that why you were able to reduce the setbacks because we're putting more of an emphasis on the bylaw to control that?
I'll start with an answer to that. So the zoning bylaw itself is intended to establish minimum lot areas, minimum lot frontages, and setbacks that are designed to essentially recognize the types of buildings that are being built and how they are different in some cases to other more mainstream greenhouses in the town. So the setbacks we've established in the zoning bylaw don't have a direct relationship to odor. They are all based on character and maintaining the rural character of the town. How the odor issue gets dealt with going forward is when someone wishes to develop a new use in the town, they would have to do all of the studies required to determine what the setbacks should be even before they start thinking about the zoning bylaw. So they have to do the studies, and the setbacks may be quite larger than what we have in the zoning bylaw. And council would then have to make a decision at that time on what is proposed and whether it is appropriate. The third piece is that the odorous industries bylaw, which I'll turn over to Tim, would apply to any existing operation or future operation, regardless of where it was set back or how it was located on a property. And for that, I'll turn it over to Tim.
Thanks, Nick. And I would say myself included, the public finds the front yard, side yard, exterior yard distances that are defined in the zoning bylaws. In this case, the changes we're making in the zoning bylaw amendment, they find those distances, from the structures and the lot line very confusing when we talk about odor setback. So we're using the same word sometimes, but we really do have a different meaning in the zoning bylaw, you're looking at sort of the structures on the lot. And through the official plan amendment, we're going to have studies, as Nick was describing. There's very detailed studies to determine the odor setback from a sensitive use. So that odor setback from a sensitive use, which will be done through the application process and will require a zoning bylaw amendment, that'll determine the setback due to odor. These setbacks in these front yards, side yards, these distances in from the roadways, these are, as Nick said, more in relation to the building on the property. Nick, have I got that roughly right from a layperson's perspective?
No, that's very well explained. And
Okay.
yes.
Okay, and then as Nick said, we've always described the odorous industries nuisance bylaw as sort of belt and suspenders, or the second line of defense, and that's because once you build an installation, you've gone through the official plan and zoning bylaw processes. Then you have reality. Then you build the structures and you operate the facilities, and then we have real experience. And the odorous industries nuisance bylaw is meant as an enforcement tool when you're actually operating.
Okay, great, Tim. Thanks for that. That clarified that situation for me. I'll open up now to the rest of council. Any questions? I see Councillor Hahn.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. This question is for Nick. Thanks very much for that overview. Is there going to be a report that you're preparing then to explain the rationale for the changes to the OPA and ZBA that you'll be able to share with us based on the comments that you've received and the changes you made because of the comments you received?
Absolutely, because there's a lot here, and I want to make sure that that what I've been doing is very transparent. And you'll be seeing a report where I do review in some detail all of the comments that have been made and how they've led to the changes that I've made in the documents. And that is under development right now. A draft is floating around internally, but you will be getting that shortly.
Perfect, thank you. And so I guess my further to that would be if Tim, that you can just ensure that council then receives copy of that when it's available.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll provide that to you once it's ready for you, and hopefully you'll have plenty of time to review that in advance of the meetings in July.
Perfect, thank you.
Any other questions from any councillors? Not seeing any. Thank you for the update, gentlemen. And Tim, nice to hear that you are maintaining on schedule, and we look forward to you making yet another appearance before council. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, to the clerk, perhaps.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a motion by Councillor Stewart, seconded by Councillor Hahn. Be it resolved that council receive the delegation Chair of the Cannabis Control Committee, and Nick McDonald, Meridian Planning Consultants, for information. If there's no further discussion, I'll call the vote. Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
The motion is carried.
Now we go back to the 4.1 presentations and COVID.
That's correct. We would be asking Chief Limburner for his presentation first.
Okay. Chief, are you there?
I am, sir.
Okay, you've got the floor.
Mayor, Council, SLT, and all participants, just give you a quick little update on some of the stats and what's going on in the region. As of today, Pelham has 35 cases total, 2 of which are active. Some of the good news out of the region is 7 municipalities right now have 0 active cases. So all our municipalities in the region are slowly whittling down. So I would expect that Pelham should be at that 0 number. If we don't pick any other new cases up, we'll be at 0 in not too long of a time. Regions at 726 cases, 32 active. They've had 633 recoveries, which is 88% of all total cases, far ahead of the province. Ontario's at 32,189 with 26,961 recovered, which is 84%. And Canada, 98,787 with 60,272 recovered. So it's they're just above the 50% mark on the national side. Our case doubling time is steadily increasing. We're at 437 days. Institutional outbreaks in the region, we have 4. Infection spread remains pretty consistent. Close contact is 64%. Community spread 24%, and travel related 11%. 84% of all cases are home isolated. The number of hospital admissions and intensive care situation is actually very low. So Niagara is testing about 100 to 200 people a day. The province has tested over 1 million people to date. I think it's 1,033,000 today. Public health has stepped up their inspection of our care facilities, retirement homes. They put them as basically a 3-level risk: a high risk, medium risk, and low risk. And they're being inspected on a regular basis from anywhere from 1 week to bi-weekly to monthly. So they're trying to stay ahead of that care facility situation. The province has announced it's going to be extending the declared emergency. They haven't given us any dates, but they will, when it comes due, they will be extending it. A little bit of good news today is that Niagara has been included in the stage 2 opening as of 12:01 this week, Thursday. So this Friday, we have a number of activities that will be allowed to open. A couple of the highlights are the restaurants will be able to open up outdoor patios. Hair salons and barbers will be allowed, so there'll be a little cheering section there, and nail salons and so forth. Manicures, pedicures, those types of things are allowed to open, so I'm sure there's a lot of anxious people. Bylaw encourages anyone or any businesses that need clarification on opening. We've received quite a number of calls today from people wondering if they can open. We'll recommend that they call us or email us, and we can direct them in the right path to make sure that they do things properly. As part of our recovery planning, the Safe 6 working groups have completed their initial drafts of operating procedures, getting the town ready to open and provide services. Comments and edits are taking place this week, and I would expect that the final document should be ready sometime in the next couple of weeks. So we're fully ready to open and provide services. And as the emergency group and the region has talked a number of times in meetings, our target date for opening our facilities, some of our facilities, maybe not 100%, but our target date is July the 6th is what we're looking at. Other than that, that's about it for my report. If you have any questions.
Before opening up to the council, Chief, I have one question. Pelham picked up another case, I believe it was yesterday, I think it was yesterday. Does the health unit break that down as to whether that's an individual at home or in a seniors facility or in an institution, or would they not give you that information?
Through Mr. Mayor, they do break it out between public or community or healthcare facility. And right now it's 1 and 1. We have one community, which is isolated, and we have one health care case.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Any questions from any other councillors? And I see Councillor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the fire chief. You said there was a target date of July the 6th for opening some facilities. Can you define what those facilities will be?
At this point right now, we're looking at limited activity at Town Hall. I don't know the extent of the services we'll provide. We're still promoting appointment only. The MCC is working on a plan to provide camps but we don't want to open the MCC up fully. I think it creates too many problems and increase the risks if we open it up too fast or too large a volume of people. So it'll be limited to, at this point, we're looking at the camps at MCC and limited services at Town Hall.
Any other questions, Councillor Hildebrand? No? Okay. I guess one question I have for, and I'll go to Director of Recreation, is that daycare, but what was happening at the Old Town Hall? I forget the name. Is that going to start up soon or not?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the early years program.
Yes.
We have not heard as yet when or if they will start up again. Normally they do not run through the summer months. So there's a good chance that we'll see them in September.
Okay, thank you
So
for that.
nothing has been confirmed as yet.
Okay, thank you. Again, any other questions from councillors? And seeing none, I will go to the clerk.
Thank you, through Mr. Mayor. I have a motion by Councillor Kaur, seconded by Councillor Hahn. Be it resolved that Council receive the COVID-19 update presentation from B. Limburner, Fire Chief and Community Emergency Management Coordinator for information. Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
The motion is carried.
Okay. Next COVID update is from Ms. Van Ravensway, Director of Recreation, Culture, and Wellness. You have the floor, Ms. Van Ravensway.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I just want to give council a update on programs and upcoming happenings. I'd first like to report on the Pelham Farmers Market. As we know, last Thursday was their first evening, and it went very well and actually ran very efficiently. They had over they counted 256 people who attended the market, and it was limited to 12 people on an ongoing basis within the market. The market had 8 vendors and will be opening up to 11 vendors over the next couple of weeks. So the farmers were very happy with the results so far, and it was well received by the community. So for the first night, things went well. Just to update with regard to programming, as you know, we are working on summer camps, and our intention is to offer summer camps beginning the first week in July for a 9-week period. So that's July the 6th, and that will run out of the community center. Most of them, we do have specialty camps that will be running out of the Old Pelham Town Hall as well. And all of our programming is under the guidelines of the province or public health. So with regard to aquatics, facility staff have been working on the preparation of the pool, and within the next couple of days, probably Monday, we will begin to fill the pool, and we're working with public health again, and their inspections will be, I believe, the 26th of June. So in preparation for an opening the first week in July again. And we will give council details on what will be offered and when. You'll see a new programming coming out according to the guidelines. And as Chief indicated, that we are now able to prepare for stage 2 opening, which already we've had requests for field use, Pelham Minor Ball and the soccer club Obviously, their leagues are not running, but they still want to run clinics. So over the next couple of weeks, we will be working with the community groups and offering limited use under the direction of the guidelines for their activities. As well, over the next 2 to 3 weeks, we will be preparing for other activities at the community center, again, under the guidelines. And we're hoping to have one pad of ice available sometime the beginning of July. And I believe that's about it. I will try to update you at every council meeting and to keep you informed. And if you have any questions.
Before I open it up to council, Mr. Amendments, I have one. When we do open the ice, and you've mentioned before that you've had several inquiries, do you see that going mostly to what do you call hockey schools, or maybe perhaps exclusively to hockey schools, or to pick up summer ice? And any idea how that looks like it might shake out?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, we have many inquiries, figure skating, or hockey schools, instructional. The main deal is, you can only have 10 people. There's no use of change rooms. Mainly it's instructional that we're hearing from, which is limited, and to me, it's a safe way to begin.
Thank you. So is that 10 people on the surface of the ice? Is that what you're saying?
Total.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Thank you for that. Okay. Any questions from any other councillors on the report? Not seeing any. I will return to the clerk.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor, I have a motion from Councillor Stewart, seconded by Councillor Hahn. Be it resolved that Council receive the update, reprogramming and aquatics presentation from Ms. Van Ravensway, Director of Recreation, Culture and Wellness, for information. Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries.
Next is a update from the building permit activity provided by Director of Community Planning and Development, Ms. Weens. Ms. Weens, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I'm pleased to give you an update. As everyone is well aware, the construction industry is an important part of Niagara's economy, and it will be an important part of certainly revitalizing that economy as we come out of COVID. What I can advise you is prior to the pandemic being declared, through the month of February, building staff were getting themselves organized and trained and software purchased to provide for the submission of building permit applications digitally. And we went live with that at the beginning of March. So that's really enhanced our ability to provide good customer service during the COVID period. And we were miles ahead of other municipalities. So when the pandemic was declared, March 16th, 17th, we were already in process of receiving applications digitally. Since the period between March 23rd and June 5th, which is an 11-week period, we did receive 53 building permits. We've issued 44. And that's quite remarkable when you consider in that same period, there was about 4.5 weeks where the provincial orders did not allow us to issue new permits for construction. So we are certainly kind of on target. On average, we generally issue about 20 building permits a month. And so the building permit activity is still very much there in terms of where we are with our averages. So that's remarkable. We've also issued 262 building inspections during that same period. So our inspectors have been busy. Obviously, we were allowed to continue to do inspections for buildings for which permits had been issued. And then since the beginning of May, we have resumed issuing permits again for construction when the provincial government amended the order and allowed that to happen. So it's been really good. All indications are that the building activity in Pelham will continue and will be fairly strong this year. Mountain View Homes, which is our largest builder, has indicated to us that they are selling homes fairly steadily and at a good rate. They themselves are even surprised at that. So that bodes well for us in the town of Pelham. And Grey Forest Homes is very anxious to get going on their next townhouse condominium development. And as a result, we keep seeing applications also in terms of planning and development applications continue to come in during this period of time. When the pandemic was initially declared, all of our staff were working from home and able to provide service to the building and construction and development industry. Since about the beginning of May, we have had 3 building staff in the office pretty much full time, and depending on how many inspections, there could be 4 building staff in the office. Planning staff continue generally to work from home, although some are coming in 1 day a week, just again because of the logistics. It's easier some days to just be in the office and working. But when we are in the office working, we continue to certainly maintain our social distance and wear masks and, practice good hand hygiene and so forth. So I just wanted to let council know, just very preliminary and very high level, that the construction industry continues to remain very strong here in Pelham, and it's projected to be strong through the summer and fall months as well. So thank you. Happy to answer any questions.
Great. Wow. Thank you for that great report. Great to see that the building industry is not going to be shying away from advancing. I know various members in the trades, whether electricians or framers and what have you, and they're all saying that they're very, very busy, that COVID hasn't slowed them down at all. So excellent report, and obviously we like to see the houses being built. Thank you. Any questions, comments from other council members? Not seeing any. I will return to the clerk.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor, on a motion by Councillor Wink and seconded by Councillor Stewart. Be it resolved that Council receive the building permit activity amid COVID-19 presentation from B. Weens, Ms. Weens, Director of Community Planning and Development, for information. Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
The motion is carried.
Okay. And the last report on COVID-19 update comes from corporate administration, and we now give the floor to our CAO, Mr. Cribbs. Sir.
Well, Council, I'm happy to report that there's no real need to hear from me this week. You've heard very ably from 2 directors and a fire chief who, as a collective, hit off all the points I wanted to make sure were communicated to you. Our corporate focus is on the operating/opening procedures. We tend to have that sort of nailed down and by Friday, I would think. and we're looking at the ice and what that looks like. We already have your permission to go ahead with pools. We're just at the last sort of bits there too. So pools, ice, and camps. On the rec side, all major focuses. It's full throttle in building and planning, as you've heard. A lot of things really coming together and work continuing. So really very happy, positive things, but I have nothing specific more than each of them is hit upon. So I'll stop talking.
Okay. Thank you for that report. Mr. CAO, any questions or comments? Not seeing any. We'll return to the clerk.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, on a motion by Councillor Hildebrand, seconded by Councillor Kaur. Be it resolved that Council receive the COVID-19 update presentation from D. Cripps, Chief Administrative Officer, for information. I'll call the vote. Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Okay, thank you. So now we jump down to 4.3, the report of regional councillor. Ms. Hewson, you have a report. I think this is your first time zooming into our town meetings. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. It's nice to see everyone. I miss everyone. So I'll just have to ask the clerk, are you able to project my presentation, or should I just refer to it as I verbally present?
The podium that we would normally display from is the one that is displaying the Zoom meeting. So all members of council did receive a copy through the agenda, as did the members of the public. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll just refer to each slide as I walk through the content. So on the second slide, I just giving a very high level overview on a financial update for the region, and then I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into how some of the things that have been impacted our various departments as a result of the pandemic, and how things have very quickly changed, and we've had to adjust and adapt, as the town has had to do as well. So on slide 3, I just wanted to give an overview of some of the region-wide projections we were given. My understanding is that we've been coordinating with the local area municipalities to consider the full financial impact. And we had estimated that a net deficit across the region is going to be projected around $7.5 million. If we move to slide 4, we can see a more specific projection of the Niagara region, and we had initially referenced a net cost of $9.3 million before funding announcements with a net deficit of $3.9 million. After seeking more clarity on how some of the different funding opportunities we could tap into some of those opportunities. As of that's a typo, but May 21st, our deficits projected at $2.9 million. So a significant challenge budget-wise, and I'm sure the town is in the same situation. And on slide 5, I just gave another overview of all of the specific departments that we have and some of the ways that they've been impacted. I'm not going to read them all for you, but it's more of an overview. I've tried to outline the different aspects of the region and how they've had to adapt to the pandemic pressures. And these items have either contributed to significant revenue losses or potentially realized some savings. But most units have been impacted by staffing pressures. They've had to enhance their cleaning measures. There may have been equipment needs and adjustments to workspaces to accommodate physical distancing. And we're trying to accommodate staff working from home where possible. And then that continues on to the slide 6, which also talks about various services that we offered that we're either not able to offer right now or suffering revenue losses from, or potentially having some savings or increased costs. So if we are to look at public health and emergency services, which is on slide 7, public health is probably, well, they've really had to step into the limelight in terms of reacting to the pandemic and responding to the needs of the community. So they began responding on January 8th when it became apparent how widely the virus was being transmitted, and had a full emergency operations center in place by March the 9th. A lot of staff had been redeployed from their regular duties to support the emergency operations center. And public health had 3 primary lines of response, being that case, contact, and outbreak management, supporting the healthcare and social services sector, and are really ramping up public messaging so that we're communicating what's happening to people and the different practices that need to be employed in order to stay safe. So if we move to slide 9, I wanted to focus on the case, contact, and outbreak management, because this is normally there would have been 12 staff members working entirely on this aspect of public health. And in addition to what's currently happening with the pandemic, there's still 75 various diseases of public health significance, which still exist and still have to be managed. But the majority of staff have been, they've even had to create a call center manned by public health nurses, which didn't exist in January, and are having to respond to a variety of phone calls, either from the public who have questions about COVID-related concerns, or they may have to do with businesses that need answers about cleaning or disinfecting, or even complaints about non-compliance. And then there's even physicians that need answers to questions that relate to the pandemic. So there's been a slew of staff that have really had to come together and respond to the needs of responding to this, the pandemic, and also, in addition to that, just, promoting information to the public so everyone is as informed as they could be. And this unit was scaled up from 12 to 57 full-time employees, as well as an additional 20 employees who are support staff. So they really underwent a significant change, their staffing, their service levels and demands in a very short period of time. And I'm sure the chief has been giving you some of our stats, but if you wanted to review the stats, you can also look on slide 9. I pointed to our website where we house all of the COVID information, and these stats are updated on a daily basis, and we can break them out by municipality as of May the 21st. And there was also a video. We reviewed this content in one of our last regional council meetings, and Dr. Hergy did talk about, because Mayor Junkin brought it up, he talked about Pelham's numbers, but it was a good overview on how to understand the data if you would like to have more information or understand those numbers better. And I do want to also mention that the Niagara Health System is also publishing their own set of COVID numbers, but the difference between what the region is posting and what's with the Niagara Health is that the region posts data based on where a resident lives, not where a resident has contracted COVID, but where they live. So if you live in Niagara and you tested positive, you form part of our stats. Whereas Niagara Health, there may be residents in Niagara who are not going to Niagara Health, but such as maybe Grimsby may be going to hospital in Hamilton. They wouldn't be reflected in the Niagara Health numbers, whereas the Niagara region's numbers reflect all residents who are in Niagara who have tested positive. And then just moving on to slide 10, I also gave an overview of the community and social services, because this is another area where they've been really impacted in terms of having to step up their cleaning and staffing and their have needed personal protective equipment. We've had to implement public health directives in our long-term care homes. We've also had to adapt some of our services with regards to our seniors at home who are of higher risk, and providing support to make sure that those seniors who are isolated at home have the support that they need. Our homeless services have also needed to be adjusted, and they're having to do screening and to help prevent transmission for some of our shelter clients and staff. And then our child care facilities, we're only operating to support frontline workers as a result of some of the changes that we've had to implement. On slide 11, I highlighted public works. They have to ensure that our community has safe drinking water, reliable wastewater systems, recycling and waste collection disposal, as well as the regional specialized and regular transit. So we've seen cancellation of all non-essential meetings, tours and activities. I do have the Niagara Children's Water Festival on there, but that has now moved online. So there's information I can share with some of you guys later if you're interested in that. And they've had to implement screening and limited access to public buildings. We've had staff redeployed from our transportation services to assist with the long-term care homes and our EMS. And we've had to significantly adjust servicing and waste management, which I'm going to dive a bit deeper into on the next slide. And then obviously transit has been significantly impacted by the changes. So we're operating a modified schedule at the moment with rear boarding procedures, but there's clearly been a significant decline in ridership, and that's impacted revenues as well as service levels. So if we move on to slide 12, waste management services, they've been impacted a lot by staff illnesses or family accommodations that have necessitated service adjustments. Throughout the entire time, we have had maintained weekly garbage, recycling, and organic services, and those have been continuing uninterrupted. And they've had to prioritize. They've had to cut services from other areas in order to make sure that those basic services have continued during this time. And we did see that with the yard pickup. It was cut back to a 3-bag limit at one point, gradually increased, and is now back to the full service as of May 25th. The large household items also resumed as of May 27th. And there's an online booking system to help manage that. But there are still a couple other services such as that curbside battery collection, compost giveaway, community events, recycling, green bin distribution that have been on hold until we can assess when we can continue those services. And then if you move on to slide 13, I highlighted economic development. Very quickly after we understood how the pandemic was impacting Niagara, we voted to support an economic rapid response team, which has conducted surveys with our local business community to better understand how COVID has affected those businesses and how we can help with recovery. They've just finalized a second survey, and I believe the data will be issued in the next couple of weeks. I expect it's going to say, it's going to tell us that there are businesses who are significantly aligned with tourism, such as restaurants or different entertainment venues, have all been, or even retail. Those businesses have been impacted more severely by the pandemic. But we're looking to develop an economic recovery plan, which we're hoping to come out in the next 3 months, which will help inform our initiatives in terms of how we can better support our business community and help them get through, recovery from the last couple of months. And in addition to that, we were starting a 10-year regional economic development strategy. We've had economic development had an MOU with the various municipalities, which helped define the relationship and the responsibilities of the region versus municipalities. So once we get through finalizing the economic recovery plan, I expect that 10-year economic development strategy to pick up again and for us to continue the work on that. So I will also note that we are doing our planning department has continued as usual. I do think there's been a significant decline in the number of applications we've seen, similar to maybe what the town's experiencing, but they're able to work from home and continue with business as usual, aside from being able to hold public meetings and open houses. We are holding one this Wednesday, which will be a review of the woodland bylaw, and it's a virtual open house. So this will be our first attempt at holding a public open house in order to collect feedback that can inform a review and directly inform the bylaw once the review's been finalized. So that should be interesting to see how well that's received and how impacting it can be in this type of environment. But that is about it. So I will ask if anyone has any questions.
Thank you for this, Ms. Hewson. Before I open it to council, I would like to two comments. I believe I saw this on CH. The regional health, I believe they're doing testing of the beaches now. Is that a correct statement? Do you remember that, Diana?
I did see something about testing at beaches, but I don't have any information about that to share with you.
I see the director of wellness. Vicki, do you have you seen that come across your desk?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, we've heard that the public health will be performing the testing of the beaches on a regular basis.
Is that starting as of this week sometime then? Or do you know?
I believe that is the intention. I do not have the schedule though.
Okay, thank you.
I just looked it up, and they are resuming beach water testing, and it will be posted as of Friday, June the 26th.
Okay.
Mayor, if I could chime in there, it's part of our regional meetings. They resume water testing at certain beaches starting on the 12th, and the target date for the regional municipal beaches is the 26th.
Excellent.
That's start opening, but the water testing had started on the 12th.
Okay, thanks, Chief. Appreciate that. And then one other thing, Diana, I know we at the town here, staff-wise, we have reassigned a few workers, but I was very impressed how the region, when the CAO Ron Tripp gave his update, and I can't remember, I don't know if he ever stated the number of employees that were reassigned, but it was nice to see that wherever the workers were needed, instead of laying off, if they could find work for them in other departments, it seemed like the senior management team was reassigning as they could. Any comments on that?
Well, we've seen reassignments both within departments, such as the public health, where they actually need healthcare professionals in order to answer some of those questions. So those staff were redeployed and created a call center in a very little amount of time. But then we also saw staff from transportation services move over to long-term care to help, as an example, to help build some of the protective screens that they need in front of service kiosks. So there has been a lot of redeployment. There has been some staff, I think, who've been challenged with maybe, family needs, just like everywhere else. But there's been a significant amount of redeployment to help keep up with all the demands for its services.
Right. Great. Thank you. Any questions, comments from any councillors? fail to see any hands. Thank you again for your thorough report, Ms. Hewson, and I will turn it over to the clerk.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. And moved by Councillor Hildebrand, seconded by Councillor Kaur. Be it resolved that the June 15th, 2020 report submitted by Regional Councillor Hewson be received for information. Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you. Down to item number 5 is the adoption of minutes. And I will turn this back to the clerk.
Thank you through Mr. Mayor. Moved by Councillor Hahn, seconded by Councillor Wink. Be it resolved that the following minutes be adopted as printed, circulated, and read. C10 of 2020, regular council minutes of June 1st, 2020. If you wish to call for errors or omissions.
Is there, after reviewing these minutes, is there any errors or omissions that any councillor would like to report? Not seeing any, the clerk will continue.
So I will call the question then. Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Next is item 6, business arising from council minutes. Do we have any, Madam Clerk?
Not that I'm aware of, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we go down to number 7, request to lift consent agenda items for separate consideration. Is there any councillor who would like to lift any of the items on the agenda? Not seeing any. We will go, Mr. CAO, do you want to make a comment? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr.
Yes.
CAO.
We're fully expecting you to lift 8.4.1 so that you can bring a motion as recommended in the memo.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the motion is listed on the agenda with, so I'll read the motion aloud. It's part of the consent agenda motion. Be it resolved, the council received the June 15, 2020 memo from David Cribbs, Chief Administrative Officer, regarding timelines and meeting consideration cannabis, and that council hereby suspends the rules of the procedural bylaw so as to direct the clerk to schedule the July 13th meeting of council having a start time of 6:30 p.m. That motion was included on the consent recommendations.
So we need a mover?
No, it's part of the consent agenda motions already.
Okay. Should we still lift it, or the fact that
It's part of the consent agenda, so it doesn't need to be lifted, but there may be comments with regard to any of the consent agenda.
Okay, so again, after hearing Mr. CAO about the 8.1 and 8.2, is there any other questions or not? Okay.
Not on my end.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we will continue on then.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, again, on the motion by Councillor Stewart, seconded by Councillor Kaur, be it resolved that the consent agenda items as listed on the June 15th, 2020 council agenda be received and the recommendations contained therein be approved as applicable. Hearing no discussion, I'll call the question. Councillor Hahn. Councillor Hahn, you're muted. Thank you. Yes. Thank you. Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
The motion is carried.
Okay, we now go to, let's see, I don't think we have any reports from members of council. So we go down to 10.2, staff reports requiring action. 10.2.1, 2020 by-election timeline and draft proposed pandemic procedures, 2020 to 0082, and I believe Madam Clerk will make this presentation.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, we do have a motion by Councillor Hahn, seconded by Councillor Hildebrand. Be it resolved that council receive report 2020-0082 and that council consider endorsement of the 2020 Ward 1 by-election bylaw, establishing the Ward 1 2020 by-election date as Tuesday, September 15th, 2020. Before council does vote, I wish to point out that there was a revision or an amendment to the report, as I noted in an earlier email today, with regard to the Municipal Elections Act and individuals who are residents of Pelham or own property or are spouses of property. Previously, we had understood the legislation to say that they had to be eligible both on nomination day in the regular election, that would be July 2018, as well as for this by-election. However, that instance does not apply to the town of Pelham, as it referenced only with regard to the death of candidates, not the death of sitting members of council. So that has been amended, so I would ask that the motion read to receive the report as amended.
Any comments, debate, or questions on this report? Seeing none, I'll go back to the clerk.
So if I could just have a mover and a seconder for receiving it as amended.
It looks like Councillor Kaur and Councillor Hildebrand.
And so the vote for the report as amended, Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
The motion is carried with the report as amended.
Thank you. 10.2.2, yes. 2021 budget schedule, 2020-0084, corporate services. I'll ask the clerk for the motion.
Thank you. I have a motion by Councillor Hildebrand, seconded by Councillor Stewart. Be it resolved that Council receive Report 2020-0084 Corporate Services and that Council approve the 2021 budget schedule. I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Mayor, for questions and discussion.
Any questions or right off the bat, I see Councillor Wink. Go ahead, Councillor.
Prior to Monday, October 19th, I would suggest that the audit committee have a chance to review the draft budgets prior to coming to council.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, we can incorporate that in our schedule. So I'll talk to you, Councillor Wink, as the chair of the audit committee, about the timelines. Do you want on the schedule?
Do you know what? I don't want to lose sight of the fact that audit committee has to be seeing reports prior to coming to council. So I like to see it in the schedule, please.
Okay, we can add it in the schedule.
Thank you.
Excellent point, Councillor. Excellent. Any other comments on the schedule? No. Mr. CEO, any comments? I know that you worked the schedule out so we could be ahead of the stat plan, I believe.
Yes. Well, thank you, Council. We heard your comments from the last meeting, and I think Councillors Wink and Hildebrand both voiced a desire to be able to have more data before yourselves before you actually pass any part of the budget. And while by necessity you can only deal with them one at a time, this is an attempt to sort of split the difference. If you read through the schedule, you'll be able to re-look at your strategic plan, and that'll be another prioritization exercise. So with those new ranked priorities, we'll then be able to give you each of the three budgets, the capital, the operating, and then the rates for the water budget, if you will. So you'll have each document in hand, and while you have to consider them one by one, and you'll get the schedule implies that we'll get the capital one done this calendar year in the month of December, and the other two done early to mid-January. So we'll only be about 3 weeks behind, 4 weeks at most, sort of behind where we were last year, and putting us only 4 weeks back as a result of everything the coronavirus has done to us is actually, fairly aggressive as a scheduling. But it nicely splits the difference between letting us go relatively early to market as far as tenders and procurement with whatever it is that council endorses and it allows to be spent. On the one hand, with giving you the data earlier than you got it last year, and for all three prior to having to make a decision on any one, so you have context. We think this is, we hope this constitutes a fair and reasonable approach to all the foregoing and sort of gives something to everyone as far as timing goes. And certainly it was a mere oversight not to include the date of the audit committee, finance and audit committee. So thank you, Councillor Wink. You're right, that should have been in there. And it wasn't, but we'll correct that.
And I see the Director of Treasury has her hand up. Go ahead, Ms. Quinlan.
For you, Mr. Mayor, looking at the schedule, I know that Councillor Wink wants the information to go to the audit committee before it goes to council. The only thing is on October 19th is when we hand out the binders. Then if it goes to the audit committee, it won't go to council. We can't do it any earlier than October 19th. That's the earliest we can actually produce the draft budget. So we will have to change the schedule of when the actual documents will go to the rest of council. So just wanted to let you know that we can't do it before October 19th.
Councillor Wink?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. So I would suggest that audit committee gets the draft the same time as council review, and actually we'll have their meeting between October 19th and November 9th. Does that work?
Yes, that's doable. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great, guys. Yep.
Yeah, can I just say one more thing?
Yep.
The other reason why the operating budget is being approved in January is that we don't know what the COVID impact is going to be. So we don't know what type of relief we're going to be receiving from the federal provincial government, if any. And if we don't, then that will have an impact on the 2021 tax levies. That's why we needed to also move the operating budget to January, because in December we'll have a better indication of where things are at.
Okay. Thank you for that, Madam Treasurer. Any comments, questions to either the CAO or the Treasurer? Councillor Stewart.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. There's the public meeting for the budget schedule for September 23rd. So what happens if we're still kind of on semi-lockdown? So will it be a virtual meeting rather than people coming to see us at Town Hall?
Mr. CAO?
Zoom. In fairness, we don't know at this point in time. We'd love to be able to do a traditional town hall. And if so, maybe we might be able to do one safely at the MCC by then. We don't know. If we can do it in a more traditional style, we will. And if not, something a lot like what this looks, or what this is, we believe that sort of, I think the area treasurers are going to have very similar discussions amongst Teresa and her colleagues, or her analogs from elsewhere, and sort of try to come up with clever ways to do that. And we've got a few months yet. So don't know exactly what that looks like, but if all else fails, this is the medium.
Does that answer your question, Councillor?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments on this? Not seeing any. I will turn to the clerk.
Thank you, through Mr. Mayor. I do have a motion to amend this to include the audit committee review in the 2021 budget schedule as on a motion by Councillor Wink. I just don't have a seconder for that direction.
No. Councillor Hildebrand.
So if we could vote on that direction first, I will take the vote on that. Wink and Hildebrand. Councillor Hahn?
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand?
Yes.
Councillor Kaur?
Yes.
Councillor Stewart?
Yes.
Councillor Wink?
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin?
Yes.
Thank you. So the amendment for the staff direction to include the audit committee has been approved, and now we'll have a vote on the motion as amended. Sorry, I just have to get this underway. So, Councillor Hahn?
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand?
Yes.
Councillor Kaur?
Yes.
Councillor Stewart?
Yes.
Councillor Wink?
Yes.
Mayor Junkin?
Yes.
The motion carries as amended.
Thank you. Now we move to 10.2.3, outdoor restaurant patios. And this is a report from the planning department. So I believe Ms. Weens, you have the floor.
So, Mr. Mayor, I'll put the motion on the floor for discussion.
Yep.
A motion by Councillor Wink, seconded by Councillor Kaur. Be it resolved that Council receive Report 2020-089 and that Council support the temporary waiving of 2 parking space requirements for the restaurants to allow pop-up parking lot patios to be used in parking areas during the pandemic in order to support the local restaurant businesses. Over to you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Okay, we will open this up to Council. Any questions or comments on the report? Councillor Kaur.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. I did get a call late this afternoon from a business owner in a mall wondering why only 2. He feels that he could have enough space for 4. Really, it's having 2. He just mentioned it could only be 2 tables, 2 to 3 tables at the most.
Yeah. So we will go back to planning because you're right. By the time you do social distancing, perhaps 2 would be inadequate. Back to you, Ms. Weens. Any comment on that?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Certainly, planning staff is not necessarily married to 2 spaces. We are trying to balance the need to provide parking with the need to be able to offer outdoor seating. I too heard from a restaurant operator over the weekend, and they indicated they wanted 5 spaces and would be looking at putting in picnic tables, 1 in each spot. So it depends on the type of tables and the type of seating you're going to offer. But we do want to be able to still provide some parking and make sure that, you know, the guests that do come to the restaurant, that there is still going to be adequate parking. So if it's 2 or 3 or 4, you know, staff is certainly flexible on that. We're not necessarily married to 2. We also had some further discussions with the fire chief and the CBO because probably most of these operators will also put up tents, and tents over a certain size will require a building permit. So when you're at kind of 4 parking space size, that's probably the threshold where you'll need a permit for a tent. So that's just some further information for council to consider as well. But certainly from a staff perspective, we feel it's important to support these businesses and provide them the opportunity to have the ability to have an outdoor patio. And so we'd be looking to council in terms of passing a motion to waive whatever that number of parking spaces is that council feels is appropriate.
Councillor Kaur, you still had your hand up?
Yes, through you. So how would an owner go about changing the 2, or who would he approach from the city?
So, Mr. Mayor, through you, council can just change the recommendation in this report. The report recommended 2, but if there's enough of council, you can put an amendment on the floor and change that motion from 2 spaces to 4 spaces, or whatever number of spaces council feels is appropriate.
So I think it must be also remembered that these restaurants can only operate at 50% capacity. So it does follow through that they're not going to need all the parking that they would normally need. So to lose, whether it be 4 or 5 spaces, again, because they're running at a reduced capacity, I believe the 2, as Mr. Cora's and his business friend has pointed out, is undersized. Maybe council would like to see that jump up, whether it be 4 or 5. Councilor Cora?
Yes, I'll put an amendment in for 6.
Okay, is there any seconder for that? Councilor Hahn will second that amendment. Discussion on the number 6 as patio enlargement. Councilor Wink.
So just to be clear, we have a number of establishments on Pelham Street that have patios already, but they don't have any parking on the street. So are we suggesting that they're able to expand their patios over and above what's there, or could I have a clarification on that, please?
Back to the Director of Planning.
So, Mr. Mayor, this would allow the waiving of parking spaces in private parking lots. So in their parking lot, it wouldn't eliminate the on-street parking.
Okay, thank you.
You're correct that we do have a policy that allows for the encroachment of sidewalk patios on the sidewalk. That's a policy that is in effect and has been for a number of years. And there are 2 restaurants on Pelham Street that take advantage of that policy. And they have for a number of years.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for that. Any other questions, comments? Okay, so on the amendment then, to go to 6, I will ask the clerk.
Thank you. So, members of council, just for clarity, this is on the amendment to strike the number 2 and replace it with 6. And it's a motion by Councillor Kaur and seconded by, I have it in my other notes, I believe it was Councillor Hahn.
So if I may, just before you continue, Madam Clerk, so should we put in the word up to 6? I mean, you don't need, maybe the way it reads there, it reads you have to have 6. Should it read up to 6?
So I would turn to the mover and seconder, up to 6.
That's fine with me. A maximum of 6.
The maximum of 6? Okay, so on the amendment, Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
The amendment of up to 6 or a maximum of 6 parking spaces has passed. So now back to discussion on the motion itself with the amendment.
Any further discussion on the motion in itself? Not seeing any. I'll go back to the clerk.
Thank you. Councillor Hahn, on the motion as amended.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
The motion as amended carries.
So I'm sure the area businessmen who are being, especially the restaurateurs, I'm sure they'll be chomping at the bit this weekend to get their businesses opened. A great step forward for sure. Thank you. Next, 10.2.4, Neighborhood Traffic Management Policy. Turn to the clerk for the motion.
Thank you. On a motion by Councillor Kaur, seconded by Councillor Hildebrand, be it resolved that Council receive Report 2020-0085 and that Council approve the revised policy S80102 for the neighborhood traffic management. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Yes. Any questions or comments on this report? Councillor Wink.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to the director, and just a comment. We've seen this report back in December, and the Pelham Active Transportation Committee has been solicited for their comments. I appreciate Mr. Marr incorporating their comments, and I'm glad to see this back. Just a question to the director, because if you look at it, there's a number of different traffic calming measures, and they all have advantages and disadvantages. So there's no clear-cut way of doing traffic calming. If the director was given options, what are the top 3 preferred methods of traffic calming and why?
Okay, through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll try to answer this question. To be quite honest, it's dependent on the type of road that's in place. It depends what the issue is that's occurring on the street. As a general stance and position, Public Works would always like to see less drastic measures be applied. So in this policy and procedure, we do passive measures first, which may include some signage or line markings that would tend to try to deter speeding and control traffic in that sense. The policy does lay that out as a first step, and we would look at that. Then if those didn't work and we need to take more solid measures with respect to traffic calming, as part of this policy and procedure, we have public consultation. So through the public consultation process, we would get input from the public and to determine what the most efficient and successful traffic calming measures would be. In terms of emergency services, I know that any vertical deflection is not liked because of having to slow down emergency vehicles. So that's a consideration, and that's also part of this policy that we would apply. We are trying currently on some new construction projects, specifically on Pelham Street North. We're trying some road dieting, which I personally think is going to be effective in reducing traffic speeds. And in a sense, you bring pinch points down on the road, which will give a visual effect and also tend to slow traffic down at those pinch points. Not a chicane, but it visually reduces the lane widths and the roadway so that traffic does slow down. So those are some of the things that we're trying. We've had some unsuccessful traffic calming measures that we used in the town, so I would probably stay away from those as much as I could. But again, I think it's really you let the process follow out and you get the public input as well. If there's if there are traffic calming measures that we're going to be putting in place that are significant, it probably would involve the hiring of a third-party consultant to take a look at our engineering data and the conditions that exist and come up with a workable solution. So we would rely on third-party consultants in some of these certain instances as well to come up with the preferred measure.
Councillor Wink.
So we have a request for an engineering report for the initial phase of South Pelham up to Glenade Green. So is that engineering report going to take into consideration your traffic calming report that you're presenting to us today and incorporate some of those suggestions into that area?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, this is a sensitive area as well. The first section that we're doing is basically in the downtown core leading out to Port Robinson Road. So we're looking at providing some on-street cycling facilities in those areas. We're limited with roadway platform there. But even having those on-road cycling facilities will tend to slow traffic So that'll be the first. The next phase is moving from Port Robinson Road further south, and that's through the school zone. So I've been in contact with both the Pelham Active Transportation Committee as well as the Student Active Transportation Committee at Glenley Green School, and they're very interested in seeing what's going to be proposed there. So we're working with our designer right now and working with those groups to see what can be done in terms of implementing traffic calming measures as part of a reconstruction project. So those, yeah, we're still in the design phase on those. We will be looking at doing something there to try to slow traffic as it approaches to a school zone. And the policy, the way it's set out now, is that the town staff and council has the ability to implement traffic calming measures where they see fit and where there's special and sensitive zones like school zones and that type of thing.
Okay. Councilor Wink?
So I appreciate the fact that you're getting input from the school, whether it's the kids or the staff or whatever, but I hope we don't ignore the input from the neighbors that have to access Pelham Street from across the road, because those bullards made it very difficult for people to get out of their driveways. So it should be a combination of everybody having input.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll answer that. And I'm well aware of the issues that were in place with the bollards. That won't be a recommendation of mine to put back. But what we do in Public Works with any reconstruction project, we'll have a public meeting. Hopefully, most likely it will be a virtual meeting, so we're still working out the details on that. Yeah. But we will be soliciting input from all stakeholders with respect to the design that's going to be put forward. And we'll take those comments and concerns from the public and from stakeholders from the school board, and we'll incorporate that into any changes we make as part of the design process before we put it out to tender.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Councillor Hahn.
Through the mayor, this question is to the Director of Public Works. Just wondering what the status of the signs that flash with the speeding signs that tell you how fast you're going. What are we ordering extra of those? And if so, when are they due to arrive?
For you, Mr. Mayor, we have, I believe, put an order in for an additional sign. We currently have one sign, but the battery doesn't allow us to get much use out of that. So we are in the process of procuring another sign as part of the 2020 capital budget. And I can get back to council with respect to an update on that and when we expect to receive that sign.
So further to that, are we able to have a wish list as where we want these posted? Because I've got a lot of folks who are concerned about Welland Road and just speeding and that kind of thing. So do you have a list that you've created, or do you already know where they're going to go, or how do you go about, I guess, placement once it arrives?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't personally have the list on hand. I do know that we maintain a list. It's really a complaint-driven process. So when we receive complaints with regards to speeding and high volumes of traffic, then we react to that. So that's where we have the sign. And unfortunately, with the one sign, it's very difficult to hit all the points and locations at once. But we do maintain a list of where we want to place these signs in place. And when we get the second sign, we'll have more of an ability to be able to do that.
Thanks.
So if I can just clarify something, and Councillor Hahn, if I'm not representing what you said correctly, correct me. But I'm wondering if there isn't a discrepancy here. So Director of Public, Jason, Mr. Marsh, are you talking about the mobile signs that moves from location to location? Or because I believe Councillor Hahn is talking about the sign that is stationary, and correct me if I'm wrong, Councillor Hahn, and stays there and at the side of the road, and you would put it there and it stays there. Am I correct? Is that what you're talking about, Councillor Hahn?
Actually, it's good that you mentioned that, because I was actually talking about the portable one, but I know in the past I've also asked about the ones that are solar driven, and they are permanent and they flash, you're speeding, whatever.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So Yeah. So could you answer that, Director?
Yeah, yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. We are looking at purchasing the portable signs.
Oh, okay, great. Okay, sorry. Thank you for that. Any other questions, comments? Councillor Stewart?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the Director of Planning, I know there's just been another incident out on Effingham Street on a curve where there's been another accident. And I know that the vegetation has been cleared from around the sign and the guardrails. But I'm wondering, is there any kind of something permanent we can put in place, rumble strips or something out there to slow the traffic down to reduce the number of accidents at that site?
Any comments, Director?
You, Mr. Mayor. We understand that there's a real safety concern with respect to Effingham Street. If you recall, we brought a report through to council, which we were given the okay to go ahead and reduce the speed on that full section of road from 60 kilometers down to 50 kilometers an hour. So that is in the process of being done as well. Councils came back and asked staff to look into what the cost would be to install flashing stop signs on the adjacent side streets. So I know that our operations group is looking into the cost and what that would be. As well, as part of that safety study that we did, traffic study on Effingham Road, it recommended changing of a lot of the signage along that route to reflect the speed change. So we are going to be implementing that as well. So there will be a further report that will come to council with respect to the costs, associated costs, and timing with respect to changing speed signs and implementing flashing beacons.
Thank you. Does that answer your questions, Councillor Hahn or Councillor Stewart?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments on the study? Not seeing any, I will ask the clerk.
Thank you. So back to the motion by Councillor Kaur and Hildebrand. Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur. Councillor Kaur.
Oh, muted.
Councillor Kaur, your mic is muted.
Or is he there?
No, he's there.
Councillor Kaur, do you have a vote on this issue?
I don't know. He's muted everything.
Councillor Kaur, your microphone is muted.
Okay,
there
I'm
we
sorry.
go. That's okay. So this is the vote for the traffic management policy.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
And the motion is carried.
Moving down to 10.2.5, Steve Bauer Trail Hard Surfacing. We will have the motion from the clerk.
Moved by Councillor Hahn, seconded by Councillor Stewart. Be it resolved that Council receive Report 2020-0080 for information, and that Council approve the Steve Bauer Trail Hard Surfacing Project to proceed in 2020 as part of the 2020 Road-Based Repair Program. I'll turn it to you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Okay. Any questions or comments on this report? Councillor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. As I indicated the last time this was brought to council, I will not be supporting this because the safety issue we're talking about here was option 2 on alternatives, resurfacing Canberra Road to remove the rumble strips. I continually get complaints from cyclists and people that are walking around there about the safety. Being a cyclist myself, it is a danger, those rumble strips. And so my preference, if we approve this expenditure, the expenditure should be to improve the safety of Canberra Road for cyclists and people walking along the side of the road.
Director of Public Works, any comment on that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, it is a concern on Canberra Road, justified. There were, I believe, 4 projects that were put forward as part of this grant opportunity that was received and was part of the 2019 capital budget. The project that was chosen to advance forward was the paving of the Steve Bauer Trail. It's included as part of the active transportation master plan as a hard paved surface. And this project has been supported by the Pelham Active Transportation Committee. That's why we're presenting it to council. So this project was red circled in 2019 as part of the capital budget process and did not proceed. The grant for this particular project expires in December of this year, December 31st, so the end of the calendar year. Obviously that was the rumble strip removal was a project that was put forward as part of the grant submission, but the approved project was the paving of the Steve Bauer Trail. So at this point in time, council's decision is to abandon the paving of the trail and look at another option. We would have to go back to the managers of that grant to see if that would be a possibility.
Thank you. Answer your questions, Councillor Hildebrand.
It answers my question, but at the last council meeting when we discussed this issue, I brought up the same point.
Yes.
So I'm still of the same opinion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other questions, comments? Councillor Hahn.
Through the mayor to the director of public works, can you just speak a little bit to maintenance and upkeep? I guess I'm just a bit concerned if once we pave a section of that trail when it comes to winter weather, ice, puddling, all those kinds of things, and just what the predicted maintenance cost would be going forward. I mean, even in spring, you're going to get puddles. So what's kind of the prediction there? What's your estimate as far as the upkeep?
Through Mr. Mayor, so once the trail is paved, there will be maintenance with respect to rehabilitation of that pathway at some point in time, and that would be the responsibility of the town moving forward. But we maintain regular maintenance on our trails now with respect to the condition of the surface. So obviously, repairing, rehabilitating a paved path will be more expensive than regrading a stone path in the future. This particular path with respect to winter maintenance, and we've gone through our insurance, Frank Cowan, who does insurance and is very familiar with minimum maintenance standards. And we asked this question specifically of them. As long as the town posts the trail as a recreational trail, it doesn't need to meet the minimum maintenance standards of plowing, such as you would have on a sidewalk. So at this point in time, it's staff's opinion that we would post the trail as a recreational trail, use it on risk, and we would not be plowing and maintaining that trail during the winter.
And one more question further to that. And what is the lifespan then of the pave? So are we talking, we would estimate that pave would require every 5 years, 10 years? Like what is your time frame as far as having to do it again?
Mr. Mayor, so it definitely would be more than 5 or 10 years. Speaking in general terms, I believe the lifespan of an asphalt path or trail would be somewhere in the order of 20 years. It all depends on the type of foundation and base you have, and that really will affect the life of the asphalt. But generally with low volume traffic on it, basically pedestrian traffic, at the most it would see eventually at one point it may see snow plows, the small sidewalk plows. So the pavement will hold up fairly well, and maintenance will be, there may be rehabilitation maintenance required within 15 to 20 years.
And actually one more quick question. So do you expect it to be raised? And so I'll explain what I mean by that. So if you don't take the surface down and you just, level the surface, prep it with the stone and then add to it, then there could be quite a lip on the sides, right? So you've got people running and that kind of thing. I'm just thinking about from a safety perspective, runners, baby carriages, that kind of thing, versus when you take it down and then you're trying to make it level with the existing surface. What is the plan there?
Well, the plan would be to, of course, the Steve Bauer Trail is roughly 2.5 to 3 meters wide. That's also going to tie in with the Station Street reconstruction, and the Steve Bauer Trail is part of that reconstruction project in the future. So we would widen out that platform to be somewhere between 2 and 3 meters. I'm expecting to be about 2.4 meters wide, 8 feet. It'll include excavating down, putting in a proper granular base, and then paving. Once the paving is complete, there will be proper granular shoulders put on, just like you would on a road. So the trail will need to be maintained at times with respect to the edge of the asphalt, but minor maintenance. There won't be a lip of asphalt left exposed for somebody to trip or slide the wheel of their bike off. No, it would be smooth level surface for the whole trail platform.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions, comments? Mr. CAO.
Two pieces that I think bear mentioning before council holds a vote on this item. Firstly, the proposed paving of a healthy portion of the Steve Bauer Trail will greatly improve the trail's accessibility features. And so it will do a lot for those portions of the community that have mobility challenges. Yeah. Secondly, staff have recently identified a potential funding opportunity. This is one of the options that will be presented to well, with a positive vote tonight. But in theory, if that occurs, this is one of the options that will be presented to council. And although I'm speaking in the abstract because you don't know what your options are yet, it is possible that you would choose this to nominate this towards that grant, in which case it's distinctly possible that the municipality will be able to significantly upgrade the Bauer Trail at something between little and no cost to itself for an enormous upgrade. So we have a unique opportunity here where there's already 75% grant funding. There's a possibility of an additional, in essence, grant on top of that. So I bring that to your attention at this time.
Thank you, Mr. CAO. Any other comments, questions? Councilor Hildebrand.
It's not that I'm against repaving the Steve Bauer Trail, but I don't understand. We've been talking for years about those rumble strips and the safety of them, and it seems as though that's never been addressed. So, Director of Public Works, what is the plan to address those rumble strips on Campbell Road?
Mr. Mayor, currently there's no capital project directly associated with that repair. But upon the wish of council, that could be something that could be worked into a future contract or a future asphalt road rehabilitation contract. Or in fact, it could be part of our annual road patching contract to do a repair such as that. Unfortunately, at this point in time, Canberra Road is not a road that would be considered a high priority for reconstruction. And so that issue with the rumble strips would not get addressed, most likely, unless we put out a separate tender and project to take care of that removal of that rumble strip. It won't be taken care of until the roadway is reconstructed or resurfaced.
Does that answer your questions, Councillor? Or?
Yes.
No. Okay, thank you. I see two more. Let's go with Councillor Stewart first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with Councillor Hildebrand. I believe that the rumble strips on Canberra Road are more important than the paving of the trail. And it says, like, under alternatives reviewed, that is one of the things that the money can be used for. So that's where I believe it should go.
Okay. Councillor Wink.
So just some comments to council. This has been before council 3 times now. So firstly, we approved and we identified that we would pave the Steve Bauer Trail. The next one was that we would red circle this until this year. Pelham Active Transportation Committee put their recommendations in the council and said that they would like to see the Steve Bauer Trail completed with this grant money. I understand what Councillor Hildebrand is saying, that Canberra Road is dangerous for bicycles. It may be something that we need to look at going forward as far as capital improvement. But at this point, the usage of that trail, the fact that people with disabilities cannot use our trail system, and this will allow people with physical disabilities to be able to use a trail in our town, is very significant. So I fully support this recommendation.
Thank you for that, Councillor. Any other comments or questions? I also would like to say that with the endorsement of the Pelham Active Transportation Committee, I've been on that Steve Bauer Trail. It is used tremendously, a lot by a lot of people. I understand what the councillor is saying, Canberra Road. Perhaps this council will have to, depending on what happens this motion, perhaps we'll have to take a look at that and direct the director to get some quotes and put it in the capital budget if that's what happens. Anyway, that's my 2 cents. Councillor Hahn.
Mayor, just so I'm clear, how long, how far do these rumble bumps go that they're posing a safety issue? Because I mean, a safety issue versus something that's not particularly a safety issue, that should take precedence. But is this a really big reach as far as expenditure to repair those that area? Does it go for miles, or what are we looking at?
Either councillor, let's go to the director. Director, do you have any idea of the length?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not sure of the exact length. I know it runs from up at the top of the hill at the intersection of, I think it's just past Concord area, and then runs to the west past Effingham Street. I know I see Councillor Wink Nice, and I also have Ryan Cook on the line, our operations manager, and he may have some insight on how long that rumble strip actually runs. I know for a fact that the funding that we have will not include the removal of everything.
Thank you. Any comments, Mr. Cook?
No, I think Jason's got it. They kind of start up near that Vine Mount area, and I don't believe they run past Effingham too far, but I could be wrong.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Not seeing any. I'll go back to the clerk.
So the motion before council is, be it resolved that council receive report 2020-0080 for information, and that council approve the Steve Bauer Trail hard surfacing project to proceed in 2020 as part of the 2020 road base repair program. Any further questions, comments, or amendments? Councillor Hahn?
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand?
No.
Councillor Kaur?
No.
Councillor Stewart?
No.
Councillor Wink?
Yes.
Mayor Junkin?
Yes.
Members of council, the motion is tied, which means the motion is lost. I'm not sure if the CAO wishes to comment on next steps with regard to this grant.
Well, perhaps we should hear from Councillor Wink first.
So, question to council. Why do we establish committees in this town if we don't listen to their recommendations? Pelham Active Transportation Committee is fully aware of the rumble strips on Canberra Road. They're all about cycling. They're all about walking. They're all about healthy living. They've made a recommendation to this council, and we're ignoring what they're presenting to us. If we keep on ignoring committees and what they're trying to do for our town, why the heck do we have committees in the first place? Like, I'm sorry. I find this very, very demoralizing for the committee and for this council.
Any comments, Mr. CAO, as to what would happen to this grant now?
We applied for this grant way before I was employed here. Councillor Wink is correct in his historical recount. This has been, was it the third time before you or fourth? The town has a fairly extensive and quite attractive trail system. None of it's accessible. None. There's an Ontario, the AODA legislation requires us to be making some efforts in that regard. And I don't know how I would answer that we are with respect to recreation right now. The question was, what are the next steps? We will bring back that report I was referencing with that potential grant opportunity and see, that'll give us the time in between to see how or what our odds are of being able to reapply the monies that have been awarded. It is extremely damaging to the Pelham brand. Now, we may well have applied for this prior to this council taking office, or it would have happened just after you took office. I'm unclear on the history of that. If it was the predecessor council, fair enough. If it was this group and we applied for these monies and then we continue not to use them, it damages enormously our capacity to get future grants. It just does. Then we shouldn't be applying. But my answer on next steps forward is you are prisoner to your rules and reconsideration. You've just had a vote on a matter fully understood by all 6 of you. It was defeated. Fair enough. We respect the democratic process. We will bring you a new report talking about that other financing opportunity. We'll try to bring that to you. We will bring it to the next meeting in July. And at that point, if there's yet another funding opportunity, I would submit that that's a material difference, and then that you're probably not subject to your rules of reconsideration because there might be something that looks materially different. Within that, I'm sure we will address if there is another opportunity to use the monies that we've just declined to use, so that you have as many options available to you as possible. Or a chance to look at this with a different lens. But I would echo a number of Councillor Wink's comments where we choose to create advisory committees and where those advisory committees devote a lot of time to a specific item, become experts in it, and then make a strong recommendation. The anticipation is that, generally speaking, that is something that will be deferred to.
Thank you for those comments. As we know, the vote was defeated, so we move on. Number 11, unfinished business. Madam Clerk, is there anything there?
Not that I'm aware of, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Now, you were saying that before we go to 12.1 and 12.2, that you were going to perhaps do the in-camera.
Right now, Mr. Mayor, we are at the presentation and consideration of bylaws.
Oh, am I? Did I miss something? Okay. Oh, I see. Yes. I'm
Next
sorry.
page.
Yep.
So-
Go ahead. Sorry.
So, members of council, on a motion by Councillor Hildebrand, seconded by Councillor Kaur. Be it resolved that Council of the Town of Pelham, having given due consideration to the following bylaws, do now read a first, second, and third time and do pass same, and that the mayor and clerk be and are hereby authorized to sign and seal the bylaws. Bylaw 4244 of 2020, being a bylaw to appoint Ashley Nero, Officer Number 451, as Bylaw Enforcement Officer, Property Standards Officer, and Provincial Offences Officer for the Corporation of the Town of Pelham. Bylaw 4245 of 2020, being a bylaw to amend Bylaw 4221 of 2020, known as the Administrative Penalty Process Bylaw for non-parking related offences. Bylaw 4246 of 2020, being a bylaw to require a by-election to fill the vacancy for the office of Councillor, Ward 1 in the Town of Pelham for the remainder of the 2018 to 2022 term of council. Bylaw 4248 2020 as amended, being a bylaw to amend Bylaw 4202 2020, known as the Town of Pelham Odorous Industries Nuisance Bylaw, to increase the minimum fine amount in the case of a first conviction and to incorporate an administrative municipal penalty system, AMPS, in regard to offenses and penalties. To you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Any omissions or no, any discussion? I'm sorry, any discussion on these bylaws? And Councillor Hildebrand.
The odorous industries nuisance bylaw, I just want to ask the clerk a question. Is that the same thing as item 13.1, amended odorous industry bylaw?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the extra item there showing the bylaw was added as the addendum, as explained in an email to council last week. So yes, it is the same bylaw.
Yes, Councillor Hildebrand.
Then I'd like to make a motion to divide in that section 13, item 4 out and amend that approval date to defer it to July the 27th.
So there is a request to divide the motion to consider the bylaws. So I can, if council so wishes, then we will vote on the first three bylaws, 4244, 4245, and 4246. There'll be a separate vote on 4248, at which time requests for deferral of consideration would be entertained. So I'll call the question on the first three bylaws if there is no further discussion.
Do we have to vote on whether we can do that or not?
A motion to lift or divide is just a request.
Okay. Okay. Good.
So just to be clear, members of council, this is for the first three bylaws, 4244, 4245, and 4246. Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
The motion carries. And now you have on the floor the divided motion for bylaw 4248. Over to you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Yes. So on this, is there questions, comments about the about this bylaw? And Councillor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the CCC committee, they haven't received the legal comments made by our legal department on this, and the date suggested on the July and the June 4th council meeting for this amendment to be passed was July the 27th.
Okay, thank you.
The Director of Planning has her
Yes,
hand up.
and Director of Planning, do you have a comment on this?
Mr. Mayor, through you, the Cannabis Control Committee did receive input from Aaron Verlis on this bylaw, and it was amended to reflect the Aaron Verlis input and review that they had. And back in May, I believe it was, there was a motion that this bylaw come back to council for June 15th, so that's why it's here.
Thank you. Any other, Councillor Hahn.
Through the mayor, my understanding is that Aaron Burles has reviewed this, but really at this point in time, they've made some changes and the CCC just needs time to discuss this at their next meetings. So once they have the opportunity to review this at the CCC, then we would like that then to come to us on the 27th. So yes, you're wholly correct, Director of Planning. It was initially July or the 15th of June, but at this point, looking to the 27th of July.
Yeah. Any other comments? I'm not seeing any. I'll return to the clerk.
So I have a motion, I'm sorry. So I have a motion then by Councillor Hildebrand to refer consideration to July 27th. Do I take that as a second by Councillor Hahn for the motion to refer this to the July 27th meeting? Yes? Okay, so right now the vote will then be on the motion to refer bylaw 4248 to the July 27th meeting. Any further discussion on the motion to defer? So I'll call the question on that. Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
That motion carries. The bylaw will be brought back at the end of July.
Okay, thank you. So now we're down to motions and notices of motion. Is there any notices of motion this week, Madam Clerk?
None that I'm aware of, Mr. Mayor.
And how about 15 matters of committee of the whole or policy and priorities committee?
None were brought forward on the agenda.
Okay. So now we're at a resolution to move in camera.
That's correct. So we do have a resolution to move into closed session at this point. I would like to remind the viewing public that there are still 2 items for public deliberation that have been moved to the end of the agenda. So we will now take a pause from the public portion of the meeting and resume when the in-camera meeting concludes. So those who are viewing live stream, just stay tuned to your computers, and as soon as you see us back, that means the closed session is concluded. So right now we have a motion presented by Councillor Stewart, seconded by Councillor Wink. Be it resolved that the next portion of the meeting be closed to the public in order to consider the following pursuant to the Municipal Act, Section 239(2). Personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, with regard to COVID-19, and under Section J, financial information that belongs to the municipality or local board and has monetary value or potential monetary value. One item. On the motion to move to closed session, Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
The motion carries. If you'll just give staff a few moments to close the live streaming. So I'm going to start the live streaming again. And I'll wait for notification from our staff that we're restarting. Okay, members of council, we are back to live streaming. So we will be rising from the closed session, and I do have a motion by Councillor Hahn, seconded by Councillor Stewart. Be it resolved that council adjourn the in-camera session and that council do now rise with report. Members of council, I'll call the vote. Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Counselor Kaur,
Yes.
Counselor Stewart,
Yes.
Counselor Wink,
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
The motion carries. Next item arising out of closed session on a motion by Counselor Hildebrand, seconded by Counselor Hahn. Be it resolved that the Chief Administrative Officer be and is hereby authorized to undertake the directions provided during the in-camera meeting of June 15th, 2020. Counselor Hahn.
Yes.
Counselor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Counselor Kaur.
Yes.
Counselor Stewart.
Yes.
Counselor Wink.
Yes.
Counselor Junkin.
Yes.
The motion carries. And we will now return to our regularly scheduled program. The next item on the agenda, members of council, is agenda item 12.2, which was moved down to be considered prior to 12.1. So this is the report from the Ombudsman of Ontario. I have a motion from Councillor Stewart, seconded by Councillor Wink. Be it resolved that council receive the report from the Ombudsman of Ontario dated June 2020 for information. Mr.
Okay.
Mayor?
And before we discuss these items, I'm going to step down as chair, and I will appoint Deputy Mayor Councillor Hildebrand to be in control of this, to run this meeting from here to conclusion.
So, Mr. Chair, Councillor Hildebrand.
And Mr. Cork declared a conflict.
Councillor Kaur, will you be vacating the meeting at this time?
Yes, so I'll just touch the red leave button. That's it, right?
Yes, to vacate the meeting? Yes.
Yes. Thank you and have a good night.
Good night, Councillor.
Good night.
So, Councillor Hildebrand, you can call for discussion on the motion. This is with regard to the Ombudsman's report.
Prior to the discussion, I'd like to make a general opening comment because I believe it's vitally important that everybody understands where we are and where we're coming from. I thank everyone for the opportunity of chairing this a very important part of the meeting. I would like to inform all who are live streaming and those who are listening that the town's website is an excellent source of council highlight and news. With the addition of our council meeting being live streamed, town staff also compiled highlights of each council meeting and upload it to our website. These highlights include links to the full agenda, the full council video, and the highlights of each meeting and corresponding reports discussed by council. You can subscribe to town news, including council highlights, by visiting www.pelham.ca/news and click the subscribe button. I believe tonight we have an opportunity to observe this council as it addresses transparency and accountability before the public. It's not what I would define as our finest hour and the news I want to talk about. I would sooner be talking about residential hydro rates, balanced budgets, and etc. With that being said, the services of an integrity commissioner and the Ombudsman office were engaged by this council in early 2019. Ontario's Office of the Integrity Commissioner was established to maintain high standards of ethical conduct in the Ontario Public Service. It is independent of government, striving to encourage and sustain a culture of integrity and accountability. The Ombudsman report and initial investigation by Mr. Paul Doobie and Robin Bates, and the Integrity Commissioner's initial investigation and report by Mr. Michael Maynard, under the direction of Mr. Edward McDermott, the Pelham's Integrity Commissioner, were professional and thorough. I would like to publicly thank them for their assistance and advice they provided, as I spent considerable time in discussion with both offices, as I'm sure everyone on staff also did, and council. Tonight we have reports from both offices to discuss. I would like to also note that each councillor is elected to represent their constituents, and the mayor, like councillors, has a single vote. To make decisions based on facts, not opinions. I served on the Niagara Region Audit Committee for 8 years from 2010 to 2018. This committee found it useful and informative when we provided each party an opportunity to present a short opening statement if they so desired. I sent out an email Saturday night to advise them that I would be providing them this opportunity tonight. So at this point, Mr. Mayor, would you like to provide an opening statement before we go into discussion on the Ombudsman report?
Yes, I would. Thank you. First, I want to read an email that I got from that I received from a taxpayer resident in Pelham. Good morning, Mr. Mayor. The next installment on my property tax bill, excuse me, is at the end of June, and I will not be able to pay it this time as I am still not back to full-time work. As you suggested, I will call the town clerk to discuss my situation. The above is an email I received from a Pelham resident on June 9th, 2020. I can't begin to imagine what his reaction will be when he reads this week's paper and discovers how this council has spent $18,430.30 of his money. I am embarrassed to be connected to a council, much less head of a council, which has paid this amount of money to have the Integrity Commissioner and the Ombudsman pass judgment on what can only be described by any stretch of the imagination as frivolous complaints. It is beyond belief that in this period of time of such a devastating pandemic, when unemployment has skyrocketed and many taxpayers are facing the loss of their businesses and or their homes, that this council has been forced to deal with such trivial accusations. I have written an article that will appear in The Voice tomorrow, in which I have apologized to the residents of the town for any part that I have played, either through miscommunications or lack of not knowing the rules of the Municipal Act. I've had many hours of talking with the Integrity Commissioner and the Ombudsman, and quite frankly, I've had enough. I am not going to participate in any more discussions. I am now going to bid the council and senior staff that is left good night, and I will see you on the meeting of July 13th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would at this point like to read a statement sent to me by Mr. Court. Good evening, Mayor Junkin and fellow councilors. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to make a statement tonight. During the 2018 election, I based my platform on fiscal responsibility, transparency, and the need to make decisions in an open and honest forum. To this day, I have held myself to those standards. Although not an easy decision, my two main reasons for lodging the code of complaint are as follows. To protect the integrity of my fellow town councilors, all of us, including the mayor, ran on a platform of honesty, integrity, and transparency. We all said that we would make decisions that would impact our community in open forum. However, the emails from the mayor indicated that he did not want to discuss the $25,000 donation of CanTrust to be discussed in public. As written in the email from Mayor Junkin on January 9, 2020, because this discussion did not fit the criteria, it cannot be discussed in camera. And it was decided, and I perhaps really would not want to discuss this in open session. So just once, we would make a decision by email outside of council. This was neither open nor transparent and went against mine and my fellow councilors' oath of office. Point 2, one of the major issues in our community is the cannabis industry. Mayor Junkin's email undermined the hard work of our Cannabis Control Committee and also disrespected all the residents that had lodged complaints against CanTrust with regards to the disgusting smell and the pollution. I am in no way against making our town a better place to live, but accepting a $25,000 donation from this company and doing it without proper public debate was procedurally incorrect. Also, we have to remember that CanTrust and the town are locked in ongoing litigation, so the surrounding this donation was wrong. Both the Ombudsman and the Integrity Commissioner had the power to dismiss the complaint on the grounds that the mayor did not breach any policy or procedures, but they did not do that. Mayor Junkin had over 70 days to inform council of his attempts to solicit a $25,000 donation from CanTrust and donations from other cannabis companies in the community, but he failed to pass this information on to council. Mayor Junkin had ample opportunities to admit to procedural missteps and improper actions from the time he learned of the complaint until the final report was completed. However, he did not. He had the opportunity to end this early, but he did not. In closing, I know that this has been difficult for those involved. I trust that the decision you make will help the mayor to observe and adhere to policies and procedures and rules established by council moving forward. Ron Core, Council. As I noted, I gave each one of these individuals a chance to address them, as we did when we had meetings on the Niagara Audit Committee. And I believe that it's useful information to provide us where we are today. Tonight, I chose to address the Ombudsman report first. I believe that all the details are addressed in the Integrity Commissioner's report. However, I will leave this up to fellow council members to provide a motion or request more discussion on this report. So do I have a motion, or would council prefer to have more discussion on the Ombudsman's report? Councillor Hahn.
I have a general statement to make, but it's, I guess, a combination of the Ethics Commissioner and Ombudsman, so perhaps this is better suited to discussion under Ethics Commissioner. So I'll take a statement at that time.
Thank you, Councillor Hahn.
So, Mr. Deputy Mayor, you do have a motion on the floor to receive the report from the Ombudsman for information.
At this point, is there any more discussion to be held? To Madam Clerk, are we prepared to take a vote?
Seeing no further comment on the Ombudsman's report, I can take the vote to receive for information. Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand. I'm sorry, I'll call you last. Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
And Deputy Mayor Hildebrand.
Yes.
The motion carries. Through you, Mr. Chair, Deputy Mayor, do you wish to consider a motion to extend curfew? We're about 5 minutes to 9.
Yes, I would like to consider a motion because I'm believing we need more than 5 minutes to complete this meeting.
Thank you. So I have a motion by Councillor Hahn, seconded by Councillor Wink, that the rules of procedure as contained in the Town of Pelham procedural bylaw be suspended, and that the specified curfew meeting time of 9 o'clock be and is hereby waived, and that the remainder of the business listed on the agenda for this meeting continue to be considered until all matters have been concluded. Is there any, do you wish to call for discussion, Mr. Deputy Mayor?
Is there any discussion on that point?
So I'll call for the vote. Councillor Hahn. Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Sorry.
It's okay. And Deputy Mayor Hildebrand.
Yes.
The motion carries. Mr. Deputy Mayor, the next motion for presentation is by Councillor Hahn, seconded by Councillor Wink, Be it resolved that council receive ADR Chambers Integrity Commissioner Office's closeout letter and final report dated June 1st, 2020 for information. I'll turn the meeting over to you, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you for that opportunity, Madam Clerk. I think it's important that each one of us list and talk about the issues, because we've all spent a lot of time discussing with the Integrity Commissioner and the Ombudsman Office. And there's many points that the Integrity Commissioner listed. And I think it's important that each one of us state what our position is with regards to that report. Do I have someone that would like to proceed first? Councilor Wink?
So based on the Integrity Commissioner, he did considerable amount of investigation and came up with some recommendations. He noted that all the complaints that were provided was not sufficient. So for example, name calling and whatever, but the Integrity Commissioner did find that there was essentially 3 breaches of the code of conduct. Members shall seek to advance public interest with honesty. That was one of them. In hindsight, we probably should have brought this forward to council. There was recommendations that we don't discuss this and that it does get brought to council in open session. That never happened. Members shall refrain from making statements the member knows or ought to know to be false or with the intent to mislead council or the public. That was another one of the Integrity Commissioner's finding. The other one was members shall not directly solicit funds nor receive funds for charitable purposes in their role as a member. So he cited that as a breach. The Integrity Commissioner made comment that there's 2 courses of action that can be made. One is a reprimand, and the other one is suspension of remuneration paid to the member in respect of his or her services as a member for up to 90 days. The recommendation by the Integrity Commissioner indicated that there was an error in judgment rather than a nefarious design, and he suggested that the mayor receive a reprimand from council for the code contraventions. My question at this point would be to the CAO, what does a reprimand entail? What is that?
A reprimand, excuse me, is a formal statement whereby you officially adopt a position of condemnation. So it's, you would draft potential negative character, you make a finding of negative behavior and call it out as such and indicate that it's unacceptable and that it's not to occur again. So that's fundamentally what that item is and what would be what the Integrity Commissioner is recommending to council to do.
Okay, thank you.
You do it by way.
Sorry, I didn't catch all of that.
Sorry, you do it by way of motion, so you would do that this evening.
Okay, thank you. That's all I got, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Wink. Would one of the other councillors speak to the issue, please? Councillor Hahn or Councillor Stewart?
Yes, I've got some comments to make. While I understand there was nothing nefarious about the mayor's solicitation of funds, I do agree with the Integrity Commissioner report that it was not the mayor's place to do so. Had this been discussed with council when the Bandshell Committee approached us for temporary funding, this in all likelihood would not have become an issue. We could have left fundraising solely to the committee, possibly offering guidance. We could have discussed whether as members of council we would participating on their behalf, and if so, set parameters for businesses and or community groups to solicit funds. The troubling part for me is that there had been no public discussion between the mayor and his fellow councillors. Last year, council had made a decision that we would not accept any funding from cannabis companies, at least until such time as they proved themselves to be good corporate citizens. At this time, they do not meet the criteria, as they have not mitigated their negative impact on our community, and add to that the fact that they are currently litigating against us. It feels to me that this issue would not have come to light, save for the fact the Bandshell Committee was planning to come to council to update us on their fundraising progress. That's it for now.
That's it for now. Thank you for that report. Councillor Hahn?
I did have some questions for the mayor. Apparently I won't be able to ask those as he's opted to leave the building. But I will...
Excuse me, Councillor Hahn, if perhaps you could just lean a little bit closer to your microphone. You're quite faint.
Okay.
Thank you.
I had some questions. Is that better?
That's a bit better. Thank you.
Yeah, I had some questions for the mayor, but he's left the meeting, so I'm not able to ask those, and he's not able to answer those. So I'll just proceed. Although the mayor was informed by multiple councillors, including myself, that his actions were improper and should be brought forward in open council, he continued to not act with transparency in his dealings and thus obstructed the municipal code of conduct. As the mayor has more experience in politics than any other councillor, he ought to have known better. It is important that the head of council lead by example. Council has endeavored to work towards remedying the negative effects from cannabis operations that have affected many residents in our town. The Cannabis Control Committee continues to do important work to help us achieve our goals. The mayor ought to have known that by asking CanTrust and other cannabis operations, who also have litigation against the town, to offer their monetary donations for any cause could be perceived negatively by residents and perhaps put the town in a precarious future legal position. I believe a penalty of 45 days remuneration suspension and a letter of reprimand is appropriate for these code of conduct violations. I do hope that the mayor has learned from this investigation and outcome and will move forward without reservation towards the councillor that filed this claim with the ethics commissioner. Nobody should ever be penalized or feel effects of retribution because they blew the whistle and spoke up for what is right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hahn. Is that the completion of your report?
Yes.
I thank you so much, councillors. Now I'd like to make my comment. Having read the report carefully, I agree with both the findings and recommendations. The mayor made errors, but I don't believe the errors were made out of self-interest or personal profit in mind. We aren't sweeping this under the rug, and we aren't ignoring it. Everything to do with cannabis has been tough on this town, as it is the #1 issue that this council has been addressing with the CCC committee. I'm saddened about what I hear tonight. I have great respect for the mayor's office, but I think it is clear that the mayor tried to keep what had the potential to be a municipal business from public eye, and is simply not acceptable. I'm worried that based on the statements made tonight, the information provided, that he has not learned the lesson he is supposed to, and Pelham deserves better than that. Moving forward, I would support the motion that Councillor Hahn has suggested. Would any councillor like to make further comment?
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, we don't have a second on that motion.
Through you, Councillor Stewart, are you the second?
Thank you. I'll take Councillor Stewart as the second. So, Mr. Deputy Mayor, did you wish to call for discussion on the motion? And the motion would be by Councillor Hahn and Councillor Stewart to issue a penalty of 45 days suspension of the mayor's remuneration and a letter of reprimand to be appropriate in this instance.
Would any councillor like to make a comment with regards to that motion? Councillor Wink?
Yeah, so I think Councillor Hahn put it out earlier that we're fairly new councillors to this. We've never experienced a breach of the code of conduct or any breach of any clause in the municipal act. We have an experienced integrity commissioner who has been dealing with this for several years, and his recommendation to this council is a reprimand. He states that while there was breaches, they weren't serious breaches. There wasn't personal gain as a result. He stated that the mayor made an error in judgment. And his recommendation, based on his professional opinion, is a reprimand. Nothing to do about suspension of remuneration paid by the mayor. And I will not support anything further than a reprimand to the mayor. Hey, you've got the chair.
I understand. I was just making sure that I could see the clerk and that she was ready. My concern is, from the statement that I heard from the mayor tonight, I was hoping there would be a more apologetic and conciliatory position taken by the mayor. To me, the mayor did not take that position. He took the position that what he did seemed to be right. And that to me is the reason why I will support that motion.
So, Mr. Deputy Mayor, are you ready for me to call the vote on the motion for the 45-day suspension of pay and the letter of reprimand?
Yes, Madam Clerk. Unless another councillor, I'd like to give the councillors one more chance to speak to the issue if they'd like. Seeing none, please proceed.
Oh, Councillor Hahn has her hand up.
Councillor Hahn?
Through you, Chair. My understanding is that, and these are some of the things I would have liked to have the opportunity to speak to the mayor, but again, he's left. So I would have asked him, his rationale I understood for stepping down from his previous term in council was because he believed things were not transparent. And yet the evidence now shows that he was not being transparent in his actions here. So, that goes to why I've chosen that, and the fact that he's opted to leave the meeting and doesn't seem to have any apologies to make whatsoever. Had he had the opportunity, or had I had the opportunity with him to discuss this, it may have had a different outcome, but clearly he has no remorse and no apologies to make. So this leaves me with the motion that's now on the floor, and so I'm in a position now to vote if there's not any other comments, I suppose.
Thank you, Councillor Hahn. Councillor Stewart?
Yes, further to what Councillor Hahn just said, the mayor did say that he's written a piece for the paper for tomorrow with an apology, but he made no apology to council for putting us in the position that we're in, where this information was held back from us, and it only came out probably because it was going to be brought forward by the Ban Shell Committee to give us an indication of their money raising venture, and otherwise we might not have known. And therefore I do believe that more than a letter of reprimand is important in this case.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart. Councillor Hahn?
I would like to add something else, Mr. Chair, and that is with regards to the earlier comments that the mayor made, which again I would like to have talked to him further about, and that is with regards to the cost of this investigation. Unfortunately, yes, there is a cost, but the cost came because these actions by the mayor were taken. Had the code of conduct not been breached or assumed to be breached and needed to be investigated, we wouldn't be in a position to have to pay for the legal intervention by way of an investigation. So as far as mediation, in order to have mediation, you have to have two parties that one of them has to admit, or both really have to have a compromise. They have to admit that there's some wrongdoing. In this case, the mayor very clearly doesn't believe he's done anything wrong. So mediation really didn't seem like it would have been anything that would have ever been feasible. So naturally then, instead of mediation, it goes to an investigation. Investigation has a fee to that. So in the future, again, like I mentioned, I hope that the mayor has learned from this, and it would have been much different outcome, I think, if we would have had the opportunity to have a proper discussion at this very time, but he's chosen not to take that route.
Thank you, Councillor Hahn. Any further discussion by members of the council? Councillor Wink?
Yeah, so I'll support what Councillor Hahn was saying, that the mayor left the meeting abruptly, wasn't around to address any questions that council had. The fact that, to Councillor Stewart's point, that he did not make an apology to council, he's making an apology through the newspaper to the citizens of the town, but he's got to report to council, so I will support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Wink. Are members of council, are we prepared to vote at this time?
Yes.
So
Madam
through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, this is on the motion presented by Councillor Hahn and Councillor Stewart. Councillor Hahn?
Yes.
Councillor Stewart?
Yes.
Councillor Wink?
Yes.
And Deputy Mayor Hildebrand?
Yes.
The motion carries. And we still have a motion to receive the report from the Integrity Commissioner. So I will call the question on that. Councillor Hahn?
Yes.
Councillor Stewart,
Yes.
Councillor Wink,
Yes.
and Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Yes.
The motion carries. Mr. Deputy Mayor, the next item on the agenda is the confirming bylaw. Are you ready for me to present the confirming bylaw?
Yes, please, Madam Clerk.
On a motion by Councillor Hahn, seconded by Councillor Wink, be it resolved that the following bylaw be read a first, second, and third time and passed, being bylaw 4248 of 2020, to adopt, ratify, and confirm the proceedings of Council of the Town of Pelham at its regular meeting held on the 15th day of June 2020. Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor.
Yes.
The motion carries. The final motion, members of council, is the motion to adjourn. Councillor Hahn, moved by Councillor Hahn, seconded by Councillor Stewart. Be it resolved that this regular meeting of council be adjourned until the next regular meeting scheduled for July 13th, and that will be at 6:30 p.m. There is a change in time for that meeting, as council will recall. And the vote, Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Yes.
The motion is carried. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank
Right.
you.
Good night.